Hello and welcome to Between Worlds. I'm Jennifer Kavanaugh and it is Sunday, January 31st, 2021. I have been thinking about fear this weekend, the past couple days, and for a couple of reasons. Because when we look out into the world and all the different perspectives that there are right now about how to interpret the world and what's going on, there's a variety in how we see the world, but there's a commonality in a lot of those perspectives, with the exception of just a few. And that commonality is a lot of them seem to be based in fear. So, whether we're fearing what's going to happen to our health, what if we're fearing what's going to happen to our freedom, there's a lot of this generation of that fear, and it makes me question if the fear itself is part of the purpose of what we're seeing, because you can have controlled perspectives on both sides. And when we look at fear itself, there's a couple of things to note. One is, what is the frequency of fear, right? Frequency of fear is one that keeps us in a lower state, you could say. Our mood generally isn't as high. It's harder for our body to hold that type of frequency for a long period of time. In fact, even if we look at how the brain processes fear, we know in a lot of cases it will create what's known as an amygdala hijack. And the response, as a human being, to having that fear direct in front, in our lives, is that we will either fight, we will either freeze, or we will run away. We will avoid it. And when we look at some of these scenarios that are facing all of us, we can start to see how our responses are. And some of them may be our innate responses of what we've been conditioned to do throughout our lives. And some of us may be choosing unique responses based on the situation. But we can also look at how we justify that response, right? We may justify fighting in certain instances because we feel that that's the only option for us. We may also justify running away from it, ignoring it entirely because we find it too painful to address, or we may justify taking a moment of not doing anything at all. I'm just going to sit back and observe and see what happens. And I'm not denying that those might be appropriate responses at times. There's times where we may need to address those from a survival perspective. That's why our brain has been wired that way. But we're also now going on a year into this situation, and we know that being in an amygdala attack state in the brain is incredibly difficult for the body long term. It's incredibly difficult for our stress response in the body long term as well. So the question I've been sitting with is, if fear is the common denominator here, and if we are also sitting in this period of a great ascension time, what is it that we're supposed to learn from the fear? And how is it possible that we could potentially ascend the fear? So when we look at this response, right, if we're in a fear-based response, we're going to fight, we're going to flee, or we're going to freeze. So what is it that we're not doing in that moment? Well, one of the things that we're not doing is creating, right? And think about it. When we look at humanity in comparison to some of the other, you know, galactic beings or energetic beings that we're aware of, one of the things that we believe to be unique to humanity is our ability to create, our ability to pull ideas and manifest realities in front of us. That is something that as humanity we have a great strength in. So if we were looking at transcending this fear, perhaps one of the ways, and I'm not suggesting this is an answer, I'm just suggesting this is something that's mulling around in my mind, but perhaps one of the solutions is for us to simply start creating. And that could mean a whole variety of things. I mean, from a big picture, I think it means it's time for humanity to start creating the world and the reality that we actually want. Because we can spend a lot of time fighting the old system, identifying what's wrong with the old system, but that's keeping us in that fight response, right? And so how do we flip from that fight response into a create response? How do we start creating the education for our children that we want? How do we start creating the gardens and the communities that we want? You know, there's nothing truly that's stopping us from doing some of those things on a grassroots level at this point in time. And then even just looking at it on a more personal level, if if we've lost our job, if our business has been shut down, if we're struggling from a career standpoint, we can fall into that response, that fear response again of, surrendering, feeling stuck, or perhaps feeling like we need to fight the system that has created this. Or we could start creating. And one of the things that I know as well is just with our own energy system, when we're looking at our chakra system, when we fall into this state of feeling stuck, when we feel like we're not sure what it is that we can do in the world, simply the act of creating something, anything at all, it doesn't have to be monetized, can help to shift that energy. So we move out of that stuckness state and we move into a more creative sphere of energy. So even for myself, when I feel stuck in my own work, when I feel stuck in my own business, I don't always create something that for the intention of selling it, for the intention of making a business out of it, but I simply do something that I enjoy, right? I get back to something that brings me a sense of peace or a sense of joy or a sense of focus, something that is creative. It could be as simple as dancing or moving my body. It could be painting. It could be drawing. It could be, picking up bits and things and turning them into something new. It could be just simply doing maintenance. It could be painting the walls, but something that allows me to change, to transform, to create. Because what I want to do is get that creation energy flowing through me again. And if I can do that for a little bit and I can get the unstuckness out of my body, then those ideas, then that creative energy I need for my life, for my work, has an opportunity to flow again, right? Whereas when we get stuck in one area of our life, sometimes we just sit there and we poke at it like a wound, and we just keep poking and poking and poking, and we just get more resistance because that flowing energy just isn't there. So as you reflect on, whatever decisions that you want to make, and I'm not saying that any path is wrong, um, but there is an opportunity, I think, for us at this point to really look at why we're making our decisions, why we're choosing to act in certain ways, and sitting back and asking ourselves, am I choosing this route out of fear? Am I making this action out of fear? Or am I making this action because in my heart, this feels like the right thing for me to do? And this is going to get me to the place that I want to be, that this is going to get me and help me create the world that I want to see around me. And sometimes having those bigger picture questions, reflection points for us is also a known strategy to help flip the human mind out of an amygdala hijack scenario. If we're looking at things kind of in a black and white perspective, our mind is going to stay there a little bit longer. But if we force the mind to question things and to see the gray area, then our mind will adapt to that and will help us move into that really powerful creative state, which is also part of, in my opinion, humanity's greatest destiny, is to be creators of this reality. So those are my thoughts for today. Let me know what you think, because it's an interesting topic, and it can be a touchy one too. I know for myself, even looking at some of my decisions, other people may view them in a different perspective. I may view them in a different perspective from day to day. But I find it really helpful to continue to go back to this question of, am I making this decision because it's going to help me get where I want to go? Or am I making this decision because I'm afraid of what else might happen? So much love to you all, and we'll see you soon.